I got the call at 2:47 inches the morning. Not a text, not a voicemail, a call. The kind where the phone doesn't just ring, it screams. I was half asleep on my couch in Charlotte, still in scrubs from a double shift at the hospital. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. The TV was playing some late-night infomercial about a blender that could supposedly change your life. I almost didn't answer. The number was blocked, but something in my chest told me to pick up. "Ma'am, this is Deputy Reeves with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. Are you related to a Patricia Hollis?" My mother's name hit me like cold water. She's my mother. What happened? "We found her walking along the shoulder of Highway 19, about 40 minutes ago. No shoes, no jacket. Temperatures are sitting around 18 degrees. She's got some bruising on her face and arms, disoriented. She gave us your name." I sat up so fast, my vision blurred. Walking on a highway. 18 degrees. Bruising. "Is she at the hospital?" "Yes, ma'am. Asheville Regional. Paramedics brought her in. She's stable, but she's refusing to talk to anyone except you. I'm 4 hours away. She said you'd say that." She also said, "Tell Naomi not to call Marcus." Marcus. My brother. My hands were already moving before I hung up. Keys. Wallet. The jacket on the back of the door. I didn't change out of my scrubs. I didn't brush my teeth. I just drove. The highway was empty at that hour. Just me and the dark and the occasional freight truck shaking my little Honda as it roared past. The mountains rose around me like walls closing in. December air seeped through every crack in the car. I turned the heat up until it burned my knuckles. The last time I saw my mother was 14 months ago. Thanksgiving. I'd driven up to the old house in Hendersonville, a town tucked into the western Carolina mountains, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and nobody talks about the things that matter. I'd brought sweet potato pie and a bottle of wine. I left before dessert. Marcus had made a toast that night. To family, he'd said, standing at the head of the table like he owned it. Which, technically, he now did. My mother had transferred the house into his name 6 months earlier. For tax purposes, he told me. To help Mom out, he told her. His wife Janine had smiled at me from across the table, that tight, practiced smile she reserved for people she considered beneath her. Their son, Caleb, sat next to my mother, barely looking up from his tablet. I remember my mother sitting at the far end of the table that night. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her wrists were thin. Her eyes, the ones that used to flash with sharp humor and sharper criticism, looked vacant, like someone had dimmed the lights behind them. She barely spoke. When she did, Marcus corrected her. When she reached for the salt, Janine moved it closer without being asked, then gave me a look that said, "See how well we take care of her." I tried to talk to my mother alone that night. Pulled her aside in the kitchen while Marcus and Janine were in the living room. "Mom, are you okay? You seem quiet." She'd looked at me with something between fear and exhaustion. "I'm fine, Naomi. Don't start." I didn't start. I left. That was the last time. Now, I was doing 90 on I-40, knuckles white on the steering wheel, replaying every moment I should have pushed harder, should have asked again, should have stayed. I got to Asheville Regional at 6:52 a.m. The sun hadn't come up yet. The parking lot was half empty and freezing. My breath came out in thick clouds as I ran to the entrance. The ER nurse pointed me to a room at the end of the hall. I saw her through the glass before I walked in. She was sitting up in the bed, a hospital gown hanging loose on her frame. One eye was swollen, not shut, but close. There was a bruise along her jaw, deep purple, turning yellow at the edges. Her feet were wrapped in gauze. Frostbite, I'd learn later. Her hands were in her lap, trembling, not from cold anymore, but from something deeper. I pushed the door open. She looked up. "You didn't have to come," she said. I sat down beside her. Her voice was raspy, dry, like she hadn't used it in days. I took her hand. It was cold even in the warm room. "What happened, Mom?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at the IV in her arm, then the window, then the floor. Everywhere but me. "I fell," she said. "You fell onto a highway in 18-degree weather, with no shoes on." Silence. "Mum." Her jaw tightened. Then, barely above a whisper, "He said I was making things up." that I was confused, that I didn't remember things right. So I started believing him. Who said that? She looked at me. You know who. I did. But I needed her to say it. Marcus, she whispered, like saying his name out loud might summon him. And Janine. Mostly Janine. The doctor came in 20 minutes later. Dr. Pham, a woman about my age with calm eyes and a clipboard. She told me what the exam showed. 2 fractured ribs, likely from blunt impact. Bruising on both forearms, consistent with being grabbed. Mild frostbite on the toes. Dehydration. A urinary tract infection that had probably gone untreated for weeks. We've documented everything, Dr. Pham said quietly, standing in the hallway with me while my mother dozed. Photos, scans, blood work. I've flagged this with our social worker. I nodded. Can I get copies of everything? Are you her medical power of attorney? No? My brother is. She paused, looked at me carefully. You might want to change that. I went back to the room. My mother was awake again, staring at the ceiling. I sat in the chair beside her. Tell me everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she started talking. Slowly at first, like pulling thread from a knot. It started after Dad died. 3 years ago, when my father passed from a stroke, Marcus had stepped in. The dutiful son. The one who lived close. The one who offered to handle the finances, the house repairs, the bills. Mom, grieving and exhausted, had let him. He moved in first, she said. Just temporarily, he told me. To help around the house. Then Janine came. Then Caleb. Then it wasn't temporary anymore. Within 6 months, the house was in Marcus's name. My mother had signed a stack of documents she didn't fully understand. Marcus told her it was estate planning. Janine told her it was smart. Nobody told her she was signing away everything. Then the accounts. He got added to her checking account. Then her savings. Then the small investment portfolio my father had left her. By the time she realized what had happened, she had no access to any of it. I asked him for grocery money last month, she said. He told me to eat what was in the pantry. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not shock. Something worse. Recognition. I'd seen Marcus operate my entire life. Charming when it served him. Vicious when it didn't. He'd broken my arm when I was 11, shoved me down the basement stairs during an argument. My mother told the ER I fell off my bike. I remember her rehearsing the story in the car on the way there. Say you were going too fast. Say you lost control. Don't mention your brother. I never mentioned my brother. Not then. Not for years. Until I moved to Charlotte and stopped answering his calls. Mom called me ungrateful. Marcus called me dramatic. Janine didn't call at all. And now my mother was in a hospital bed with broken ribs and frozen feet because the son she chose had thrown her out on a highway in December. What happened that night, Mom? The night they found you? Her voice flattened. I told Marcus I wanted to see the bank statements. I said I wanted to know where my money was going. Janine was in the kitchen. She heard everything. She came out and said I was paranoid. That I was losing my mind. That they should put me somewhere. Somewhere? A facility. She said it like it was obvious. Like I was already gone. I clenched my jaw. Marcus grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. I tried to pull back. He shoved me. I hit the wall, then the floor. Janine opened the front door and told me to go cool off. Marcus picked me up by the arm and walked me outside. It was snowing. I didn't have my shoes. He shut the door. I stared at her. And locked it? She nodded. I knocked for a while. Then I just walked. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called a lawyer. Her name was Dana Whitfield. I'd met her at a community health event the year before. She specialized in elder law. When I explained the situation, she was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then she said, I can be there by noon. She was there by 11:30. We sat in the hospital cafeteria, the 3 of us. My mother held a cup of soup like it was the first warm thing she'd felt in months. Dana asked questions, calm, precise, surgical. When did you sign the property transfer? Were there witnesses? Did anyone explain what you were signing? Did you have independent legal counsel? No, my mother said to every question about representation. Marcus said we didn't need another lawyer. He said he knew what was best. Dana looked at me. We have a strong case for undue influence on the property transfer. Financial exploitation is clear. The medical records from today support physical abuse. I can file an emergency petition for guardianship and a restraining order by end of day. Do it, I said. My mother looked up from her soup. He's still my son. I know, Mom. But he can't be your warden. That afternoon, while my mother slept, I drove to Hendersonville. I didn't tell her I was going. She would have told me not to. That's how I knew I had to. The house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, the same one I'd grown up in. My father had built the deck himself the summer I turned 9. The mailbox still had our last name on it, although someone had added a small decorative sign beneath it. The Hollis Reynolds family. Reynolds was Janine's maiden name. It stung more than I expected. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. Not yet. Instead, I went next door. Mrs. Tran had lived beside us for over 20 years. She'd watched me and Marcus grow up. She used to bring over pho on Saturday mornings and let me help her with her garden. When I knocked, she opened the door like she'd been waiting. I was wondering when you'd come, she said. She invited me in. Her house smelled like lemongrass and jasmine rice. She poured me tea without asking and sat across from me at her kitchen table. She told me what she'd seen. 3 weeks ago, she heard yelling. Not unusual, she said. It happened a lot recently, but that night was different. She heard a door slam and then saw my mother standing on the front porch in the dark. No coat, no shoes. She watched her stand there for several minutes, then start walking toward the road. I almost called the police that night, Mrs. Tran said. But the next morning, Marcus came over and told me his mother had a sleepwalking episode, that it was a medical issue, and they were handling it. Did you believe him? She shook her head slowly. No. But what do you say? He smiled the whole time. Brought me banana bread. Who brings banana bread the morning after they throw their mother out? I thanked her and asked if she'd be willing to give a written statement. She said yes without hesitation. That evening, back at the hospital, I sat with my mother while she ate dinner. Mashed potatoes, green beans, a dinner roll she tore into tiny pieces but barely ate. The TV in the corner played the local news on mute. She looked better. The swelling around her eye had gone down, but her voice still carried that hollow quality, like she was speaking from inside a well. You went to the house, she said. It wasn't a question. I talked to Mrs. Tran. She closed her eyes. I told you not to make a scene. This isn't a scene, Mom. This is your life. She was quiet for a while. Then, almost too soft to hear. There's something else. I waited. In the closet upstairs. The one in the guest room. Behind the winter coats. There's a box. What's in it? Things he doesn't know about. Things I kept. Bank statements before he changed the accounts. The original deed with just my name. Letters from your father's lawyer about the trust he set up before he died. I stared at her. Dad had a trust? Her eyes met mine. Marcus doesn't know. Your father didn't trust him. He set it aside for you and me. Separate from everything else. But the paperwork is in that box. If Marcus finds it, it's gone. I left the hospital at 9 p.m. and drove back to Hendersonville. The house was dark. Marcus's truck wasn't in the driveway. Janine's SUV was gone too. I used the key I'd kept on my keychain for 15 years, the one they never asked me to return because they forgot I had it. The house was quiet. It smelled different. New furniture, new paint, a candle on the counter that probably cost $40. Janine had redecorated. The living room wall that used to hold family photos now had a gallery wall of Marcus, Janine, and Caleb, matching outfits, professional lighting. There wasn't a single photo of me or my mother. I went upstairs. The guest room closet was exactly where she said. Behind 3 winter coats and a plastic bin of Christmas ornaments, I found it. A shoebox, taped shut, with my mother's handwriting on the side. For Naomi. I opened it there on the floor. Bank statements going back 4 years. The original house deed, Patricia A. Hollis, sole owner, and a manila envelope with my father's attorney's letterhead. Inside, documents for a trust fund he'd established 18 months before he died. Beneficiaries, my mother and me, not Marcus. The trust held just over $340,000. My father had known. He'd seen what Marcus was becoming, maybe even what he already was, and he'd tried to protect us from beyond the grave. I photographed every document. Then, I put the box back exactly where I found it, locked the door behind me, and drove away. My hands shook the entire way back to the hospital. Dana filed the emergency petition the next morning. Temporary guardianship, restraining order against Marcus and Janine, and a formal complaint to Adult Protective Services. She also filed a motion to freeze all accounts connected to my mother's name and to void the property transfer on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. By noon, Marcus knew. He called me 17 times in 2 hours. I didn't answer. Then the text started. "You're making a huge mistake. Mom is confused. You don't know what you're getting into. This is family business, Naomi." Then, the last one. "You're going to regret this." I screenshot every message and forwarded them to Dana. The hearing was 4 days later. I dressed in a navy blazer I'd borrowed from a coworker. My mother wore a simple gray cardigan. Her hair pulled back, her bruises still visible but fading. She walked slowly, held my arm. She didn't say much. Marcus arrived in a charcoal suit, looking like he was going to a business meeting rather than a court hearing about whether he beat his mother. Janine was beside him in heels and a cream-colored blouse, looking composed and slightly annoyed, like we were wasting her afternoon. Their lawyer spoke first, painted a picture of a devoted son overwhelmed by the demands of caregiving, described my mother as confused, prone to wandering, mentally declining, called me an estranged daughter who had abandoned the family and was now trying to insert herself back for financial gain. I felt my jaw tighten. Dana squeezed my hand under the table. Then it was our turn. Dana presented the medical records. Photographs of the bruises, the fractured ribs, the frostbitten toes. Dr. Pham's written assessment. The original deed. The forged power of attorney's signature that didn't match my mother's handwriting on any other document. The bank records showing $87,000 in transfers from my mother's accounts to Marcus's personal account over 18 months. Mrs. Tran's written statement. The judge, a silver-haired woman named Judge Aldridge, read each document carefully. She asked Marcus directly, "Mr. Hollis, can you explain the property transfer?" He cleared his throat. My mother asked me to help her manage her affairs. She was having trouble keeping up with bills. Judge Aldridge looked at the bank records. "These transfers don't appear to be bill payments, Mr. Hollis." Marcus shifted in his chair. "Some were personal loans. She wanted to help me through a rough patch." A rough patch that lasted 18 months? Janine whispered something to Marcus. He ignored her. Judge Aldridge turned to my mother. "Mrs. Hollis, do you wish to say anything?" My mother stood slowly. She held the edge of the table for balance. She didn't look at Marcus. "I spent 32 years raising 2 children," she said. "I thought love meant keeping the peace. I thought silence meant loyalty. I was wrong. My son took my house, my money, and my dignity. And when I asked for an explanation, he put me outside in the snow and locked the door." She paused. "My daughter drove 4 hours in the middle of the night to find me. She didn't owe me that. I wasn't a good mother to her. But she came anyway. That tells me everything I need to know about who I should have been listening to all along." She sat back down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Aldridge ruled within the hour. Temporary guardianship granted to me. Restraining order against Marcus and Janine. Effective immediately. All accounts frozen pending investigation. Property transfer suspended and referred to the district attorney's office for review. Outside the courthouse, Marcus caught up to me on the steps. His composure had cracked. His face was red. His voice was low and shaking. "You think you won something?" I looked at him. "I think Mom gets to sleep indoors tonight." He stepped closer. "You're destroying this family. You destroyed it years ago," I said. "I'm just the one who finally showed up." Janine pulled him away by the arm. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anyone. She just walked to the car, heels clicking against the concrete, her head down for the first time since I'd known her. 2 weeks later, the district attorney filed charges. Financial exploitation of an elderly adult. Assault. Marcus was arrested on a Wednesday morning. Janine was named as a co-conspirator. Their assets were frozen. The house, the one my father built, was returned to my mother's name. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. just a family torn apart by the person who was supposed to hold it together. My mother moved into a small apartment in Asheville, close to the hospital where she could get regular care. I took 2 weeks off work to help her settle in. We bought new towels, a coffee maker, a small plant for the kitchen window, ordinary things, but they felt enormous. She didn't apologize, not with words, not in any grand way, but she started doing small things. She asked about my shifts. She remembered the name of my best friend. She made me tea one morning, without being asked. The way I like it. Too much honey, barely any milk. One afternoon, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, looking at an old photograph she'd kept in her wallet. It was the two of us at my high school graduation. I was smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. She was beside me, one arm around my shoulder, looking at me instead of the camera. "I didn't know you still had that," I said. She traced the edge with her thumb. "I never took it out." I sat down across from her. We didn't say anything for a long time. Mrs. Tran sent flowers the following week. A small bouquet with a card that read, "The garden always knows which roots to keep." I put them on the windowsill where the morning light came in strong. Marcus was released on bail a month later. He didn't contact us. I heard through an old neighbor that he and Janine had moved to Georgia. Caleb was staying with Janine's parents. The house on the cul-de-sac sat empty for a while before we put it on the market. I didn't feel relief. I felt tired. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. But underneath it, something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. One Saturday morning in February, my mother and I went to the garden center off Merriman Avenue. She picked out a flat of pansies, the purple kind with yellow centers. I carried them to the car while she walked ahead, slower now, but steady. We knelt together on the small patch of dirt beside her apartment building. The ground was still cold, barely thawed. She dug with her bare hands, pressing each plant into the soil like she was tucking something in for the night. "Will they survive the frost?" she asked. "If we cover them," I said. She nodded. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "I should have covered you." I didn't answer. I just kept planting. Some things don't need a response. They just need space to grow. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and stared at the mountains. The air was sharp, but not cruel. The stars were out, scattered like salt across dark fabric. I thought about the drive, the hospital, the courtroom, the box in the closet. I thought about how my father, in his quiet way, had tried to tell us something. That protection doesn't always look like presence. Sometimes it looks like paperwork and a locked box and a name on a trust. Some families break under the weight of what they won't say. Others break because someone finally does. I finished my coffee, went inside, and locked the door behind me. Not out of fear, just habit. And for the first time in a very long time, the quiet didn't feel like something missing. It felt like something beginning. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting someone you love, you know there's no right answer that doesn't hurt. But sometimes the hurt is the proof that you cared enough to act. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to stand up to someone your family told you to trust? I'd love to hear your story. And if this one moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. There's more coming.